Are you homeschooling a special needs child? Well, today we're talking with Amy Bodkin, a special needs consultant, all about homeschooling with special needs and the Charlotte Mason method. It's going to be great, so stay tuned. Okay, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, my name is Amy Bodkin, and I am now the special needs consultant at A Charlotte Mason Plenary, and very excited about that. I have an educational specialist degree in educational psychology with a specialization in neuropsychology, and the other degrees that came before that to get there. Not quite as critical as the last one.
So what do those degrees, like in layman's terms, what is that?
So an educational specialist is kind of like a practical PhD, and it's someone who has a degree in educational psychology. They have studied child development, brain development, and have worked to understand how we learn and grow best. And also what happens when things aren't working the way that we typically expect them to work. And then neuropsychology is looking more at the brain and the neural pathways in the brain and how they work. So instead of just looking at, okay, we have this child who's got reading delays and we need to figure out how to teach them to read, we're thinking, okay, so we're having problems in the neural pathways in these parts of the brain. So that tells us that this child is probably not going to do as well learning this way. What can we do to strengthen that pathway so that they are able to learn better than they were before in the area they had a weakness in? So
okay, that is really good stuff. Okay, so so you have all these professional degrees and credentials, but I know that this is also very personal for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I'm an autistic adult, and I had a lot of learning challenges because of that when I was in school. I'm dyslexic and have an auditory processing disorder. My children are both on the autism spectrum, and they have a collection of processing issues that have led to some academic problems as well. And so that's kind of how I got into doing some of this. At first, it was just interesting because it was very much my experience in school, and I wanted other kids to be able to have a better experience than what I had growing up. And then when we had our kids, I learned a lot when I was in school, but doing it with your children is a very different experience. You can read all the research you want all day long, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to get that kid that's the outlier who doesn't match the research at all. And then you have to really start thinking, okay, what are we seeing? And what does this tell us about what's going on in the brain? And then how can we use that information to help the child to grow and to learn better? And to do it in a way that is comfortable for the child, because yes, you can teach a dyslexic child to read and learn their math facts the brute force method way, which is just drill and practice, and years later they eventually get it, but it was a really painful way to get there. So
right. Okay, so you're coming at it from all angles then, professional, as yourself and your own experiences, and then as a mom too, and then also as a homeschooling mom, a homeschooling Charlotte Mason mom.
Even better. There are not many people who have the training that I do, are on the autism spectrum, have children on the autism spectrum, and also have a good handle on Charlotte Mason's philosophy.
Right.
I don't know another one.
You're it. Okay, so why Charlotte Mason? What was it about the Charlotte Mason philosophy or method that made you say, yes, this is what is best for my kids?
The first thing was that it just kind of resonated with me. As soon as I found it, I was like, oh, I would have loved to have learned this way. Because I had a lot of the drill and kill, and it was not very fun. But once I learned more about her method, what really grabbed me was her emphasis on children being born persons, because children, I mean, so often children talk about this all the time. One of my daughter's friends was mentioning this a while back in a paper she wrote, how children are very often seen as second-class citizens and not treated as people. Whereas your special needs kids, it's usually even worse, because they learn differently, and sometimes people will mistake delays as a lack of intelligence. And so it can be a real issue. And so any kind of consulting I do at this point, like ever since I came in contact with Charlotte Mason, has always been from a Charlotte Mason perspective, because she starts with children are born persons.
Yeah.
And I like how her 20 principles break down to children are born persons, and they should be treated as such, mind, body, and soul. And then you get to the next, I don't know, 5 to 10, and she's talking about how you can help someone grow academically and physically without infringing on that personhood. And then she comes down to the last few, and she's talking about how to develop the child's soul without infringing on the personhood, to let their spirit, higher self, whatever you call it, but that part of you that's not your brain and not your body. Yeah. And I love that, because most of the time, special needs kids, they're getting their education, and it's all about reading, writing, and math. And there's no one's paying any attention to their spirit, soul, higher self, whatever it is. And sometimes the physical gets ignored as well. Sometimes it won't, with fine motor therapies and stuff. But yeah, okay. So it's that whole personhood. So the other thing that I really like about Charlotte Mason's method is that there's a particular quote from her books. The question is not how much does the youth know when he has finished his education, but how much does he care? And about how many orders of things does he care? And usually when I hear this quote quoted, people stop there, but it's the next part that I really love. Okay. In fact, how large is the room in which he finds his feet set, and therefore how full is the life he has before him? And that's what we want for all of our kids, but especially our special needs kids. We want them to have a full life and to have their feet set in a big room, as big of a room as is comfortable for them. And
I love the quote. Yeah, I think it's probably every Charlotte Mason mom's favorite quote, is that quote, and the principle number 1, children are born persons. Those two quotes are really what drew me to the Charlotte Mason method to begin with. And it really is, it sums up so well what we want for our children in the way of education. Okay, so one of the things that I love about Charlotte Mason is that it's a method, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a system. I think too many people maybe turn it into a system these days, but it's a method. And so the method adapts to you and to your family and to your needs. And that is, for me, that's one of the, like, my home and my homeschool is going to look totally different than your home and your homeschool.
And because it should.
Yes, it should. My family has different needs. My kids have different needs than your kids. So to me, it's perfectly suited for all children, no matter what their developmental level. So what are some of the ways that you have had experience with adapting the Charlotte Mason method for special needs children?
So I really like that quote, because in that quote, she's really talking about what our end goal is. And a lot of times with regular public private schools, our end goal is that they get a diploma, a high school diploma, and then they're able to go to college. But that doesn't fit every special needs child. It fits some of them, but not all of them. And what is it that we want for them? What is our goal? And so I think sometimes we try to shoehorn kids into that goal when that's really not a good fit for them as people. I did go through a lot of school to get my degree, but it put a great deal of stress and strain on me. And knowing that, we've looked with our own kids at different options for them, because it has been, it really taxed my health to be able to do what I did. And so did that make me happy? I don't know. I mean, it ended up being a good thing. I'm not complaining. But when I'm looking at my kids, I'm going, well, what would make you happy? What would put your feet in a large room where you can find peace? Yes. So instead of going, oh, well, this is what everybody does, so you're going to do that.
Right.
And so when she says to set their feet in a large room, I'm thinking, okay, so what is the next thing we can do to make your room slightly larger? And then another quote that she, well, I don't have the quote, but she says somewhere that she says that every day a child needs something to love, something to think about, and something to do.
Yes.
And that is also incredible, because some of our kids don't graduate. And really, honestly, none of our kids should ever graduate from a Charlotte Mason life, because it's meant to feed you mind, body, and soul. And when you quit feeding something, it dies. And so you have to keep exercising the body or your health deteriorates. You have to keep exercising your mind or your mind deteriorates. And same way with your soul, spirit, higher self. You've got to feed the whole person, not just part of the person.
Right.
And so
I love that.
Yeah. And so when I'm looking at a special needs child, maybe it's a child where I know they're never going to be able to go to college, they're never going to maybe get a job, but we can still plan them a Charlotte Mason education that is one step at a time. It's not overwhelming the family, because you can't maintain pushing a child every day for the rest of your life. Right. What we do for a special needs child, it needs to be with what their abilities are right now in mind and taking the next step. And then from there, take the step after that. Right. But keeping it in mind with what the child can do comfortably, because too often we try to take a curriculum that's already set up and modify it. And if we're not careful, we usually end up doing too much. And then the family gets stressed, the child gets stressed, the mom gets exhausted because she can't do it.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about how you need to find peace for the child and meet the child where they are at this moment and what they need at this moment.
Yes.
And then, but I also love about your approach is that you have to find peace for mom, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, you do.
Yes, we need peace, and we need the confidence that this is working for my child and this is right. Helping them.
Right, and so oftentimes we don't have the confidence, or we are not sure that we're doing the right thing. And so, like, well, do I do this or do I do that? And then a lot of times when it comes to special needs stuff, it tends to be expensive. If you put the name special needs on it, it's usually expensive. Yeah. And so then you're like, well, which one do I go with? And I'm not sure. And then you feel bad because you wasted money on something or time. And right. So there's a lot of pressure there. And right. we don't want to do that. We want to try to find what is going to be a good fit the first time, and not have to do a lot of trial and error, because it's going to frustrate everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody. The kids get frustrated when you're trying the wrong method. They don't know how to say it, but they're like, this is not working.
Yes, yes.
So, and that's also why we've tried to keep the overhead costs so low with the plenary.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we offer over at the Plenary, and why you came on board to begin with.
So we do the special needs consultation right now, and that is already a really good price because honestly, I feel badly gouging special needs parents because I know that special needs parents is every time you put special needs on something, the price jumps up 50%. And so we've kept that price as low as we can for how much work it is. And when you get a special needs consultation, so it could be about one specific academic issue, a behavioral issue, it could be looking at your entire year. And which ideally, honestly, I think is the easiest way to go, because usually if you have one specific academic or behavioral issue, it's probably connected to some other stuff. So we can kind of look at your whole child along with your family some too, to kind of see, okay, what all do you have going on? And we can even take the curriculum you're using and we can, go, okay, well, this is our starting place. How can we modify so that it actually works for you instead of feeling frustrated and overwhelmed? And we can also kind of create something that's completely unique to your child, that's a perfect fit for your child. What I do is I always ask people to give me any records that they have. I will have people do little tests for me that are all included in the fee, which is huge because those tests are expensive. Some of them brand new are like $1,000. So this is a very good deal for what we do. I can't stress that enough. So basically I'm going through and I'm collecting as much information as I can, and I'm very detailed about that. It's one of the benefits of being an autistic adult who's very good at, I'm particularly gifted when it comes to spatial intelligence understanding. I can look at patterns and see patterns and stuff. One day I'm driving down the road with a friend of mine, and she's trying to make sure I can get back home okay. I'm like, I got it. It's X to the third. She's like, what? I'm like, well, the road home, it makes the shape of the graph of X to the third. And so that's, and she's like, who are you? Who does that?
Who thinks like that? You do.
Exactly. But it helps because I look at things as moving pieces. So I'm collecting all this data on your child and your family, and I'm seeing the big picture and how everything fits together. And then I'm going to go, okay, so this tells me that your child's brain is kind of thinking in this way, and we've got some weaknesses here and some strengths over here. And basically, I'm kind of ending up like mom's personal trainer, only it's for your child's education. And so I'm going, okay, so we need the whole brain to be strong. We can't be exercising just the right arm and leave the left arm out. That doesn't work. So you've got to do it all together, because our bodies and our minds work best when they are balanced in their strength. And so when I see a weakness, I'm thinking, okay, how can we work to slowly strengthen that? We don't want to go overboard because that really taxes the body and the mind. But we want to take another step, just like Charlotte Mason does in all of her books. She's talking about taking the next step, taking it slowly, a few minutes here, a few minutes there. That's all it takes. It's a slow change. But it's the best kind of change, because when you try to go, oh, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in a week, that's really not a good idea at all.
Okay, now, and you have been consulting for a long time with special needs families.
Yes, 15 years.
15 years. So you've got a lot of experience under your belt.
I do, and it's been different. Sometimes I've consulted with private schools. Sometimes I've consulted with homeschool families. I used to work in public schools, and the districts I worked in were some pretty rough districts. The last one I worked in had the second highest dropout rate in the nation. So, so I've had a bit of varied experience with a little bit of it all. So
okay, so
sensory problems and behavioral problems and academics and everything.
You've covered it all. So, okay, so parents can opt for a consultation with you if they feel like they need that one-on-one, and then over at the plenary, we also have the form guides that are already
Yes.
up, and I know that you have used the form guides, and
I love them.
Thank you. Why do you love them?
I love them because for the first time I had a Charlotte Mason tool where it could be perfectly customized to my child, but also it had everything I needed right there. I didn't have to go and read volume 1 and then volume 6 and then figure out which curriculum I wanted to use and then figure out how to modify it for my kids. It was all right there in the packet. It's like, okay, I want to do Form 1. Oh, this is what Charlotte Mason said to do for Form 1 and why. Oh, okay, I can do that.
Yay!
So, it was so much easier. I was like, why would I ever want to do it the other way?
I'm so glad. That it makes me feel so good when I hear that parents, really were able to use it, and it's brought peace, and really they were able to customize their homeschool so that it's a fit, right?
Yes,
It's a good fit.
Ever since you came out with the form guides, even before we even talked about me coming on the plenary, I have been talking about them nonstop, especially to special needs parents, because I'm like, look, guys, this is the way to go.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So with the form guides, we had a conversation before you came on as a consultant about the only thing that could make them better is, and that is creating a guide that, creating a guide that would approach the Charlotte Mason method from a developmental point of view.
Right. Which is exactly what Charlotte Mason did in all of her books. She was talking about it from a developmental perspective. It's the way she's written it, nobody would notice it if they didn't know a lot about child development and brain development. And she was really completely on top of it, because
she was so on top of
it. I mean, there's almost nothing you can poke holes with, which means she had to be very cutting edge on all the latest research, because it's been about over 100 years now.
Yes.
And the fact that we still can't poke holes with that, and we've had huge developments in science and research and psychology and brain development. I think like neurons, I've talked with my grandparents before, and they're like, what is a neuron? So she was really on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just so impressive.
So we're going to be working together then on the developmental form guides. I'm
so excited about that.
Yes. And hopefully we're shooting for the first of the year or so. Hopefully they'll be ready.
So.
But so talk about how the developmental form guides might be a little bit different than, it's kind of a middle ground between the form guides that are there now and a consultation. And so what will that look like?
Okay, so basically what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at it, instead of going by grade, we're going to basically be going more by subject. So each subject is going to be broken down into its developmental steps.
Right.
So, for example, with reading, you have to learn to talk before you can read. You have to learn to read before you can write. And there's other steps besides that in there. For example, a lot of times people think, oh, my kid is ready to read. And turns out they're still not rhyming. Well, rhyming is a pre-reading step. You have to be able to rhyme before you can read if you're going to learn to read well. When we skip these kinds of steps, that's where we start to have more trouble, because the brain has to learn certain things in a specific order. And when it doesn't, you end up with other problems.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So good to know. So we're going to be listing the steps of all those little developmental steps.
Yes.
And then you can use that information to say, oh, okay, my child is here.
Right.
I'm going to start here, and then work on that step, and then the next step. And the next.
So instead of saying, okay, well, my child is in 4th grade, so they must be ready for Form 2, so they must start written narration, we're taking a look at, okay, well, where are you developmentally with your language development skills, reading, writing, rhyming, sequencing, all those kinds of things that play a part in that development. Oh, okay, well, maybe you're not ready for Form 2 yet.
Okay, so the form guides and the developmental form guides will help you to place your child and know where you are and where you need to go. But sometimes that might not be enough, correct? And so
Right.
what then?
Well, sometimes, and this happens sometimes, because it's difficult to, you can't open your child's head, stick your fingers in there and figure out what's going on. And it's not always easy to tell when you don't have the training to know what to look for. So sometimes we'll have a kid or they're at a particular stage and we need a little bit of extra help of finding where is that spot that we're supposed to be, which tools are going to help us with that. And that's where the consultation comes back in. And I love what I'm able to do with that because it is so different from anything else that's out there. Pretty much every other situation you're going to come across out seeing a private psychologist or whatever, it's going to be coming at it, okay, what's your child's deficit areas, which diagnosis do we give, and what therapies do you need, and all of that. And when I take it from a Charlotte Mason perspective, I'm looking at your kid and going, ooh, what a cool person they are. And let's see where your brain's a bit weak and let's see where it's strong. And then let's come up with an exercise plan, basically, to help
Exercise for the brain.
Yeah, exercise for the brain to help it grow stronger and more balanced so that, people are happier when they're balanced. They just are. When you have imbalances, it makes me think, kind of more like Van Gogh. Oh, clearly something's out of balance here because something is not going right. So helping kids strengthen and find those kinds of balances. And I just got done. I do reports too as an option with consultation because some families find that useful to have the documentation for their state or a court of law, whatever purpose they have. But that is an extra fee because the last one I wrote was 11 pages long. So they take a fair amount of time. Right. But I was really excited about the last one I got to write, though, because I have started doing something that I've never seen any other psychologist do when writing their reports. I added a letter to the child at the end of it because I wanted him to understand that this report doesn't tell him how smart he is, and it doesn't tell him what his future is going to be. It's one snapshot of a moment in time of where his strengths and weaknesses are and what we can do to make weak areas stronger and to find more balance. So, and I wanted him to know that because one day he'll get bigger and he might read that report. And I want to have something to him saying, you are good, you're an amazing kid, and you've got all these cool strengths. So just because you see a low score here, don't stress out about it. That's where you were at this point. That doesn't mean that 3 years later.
When you were telling that, I got a little bit of a little chills, a little choked up, because it's so different than, say, our normal society that sees a diagnosis or sees a problem. Yes. And I love, and you've said it many, many times in many of our conversations, how you see the whole child just like Charlotte Mason did. Mm-hmm. And that is so important. And so I love that little letter that you wrote. That's so great.
It changes everything when you see the child as a person. Yes. And I've gotten to talk, and I hadn't told you this, but I've gotten to talk some about a Charlotte Mason Plenary in some autistic adult groups. Oh. And so far, anybody who has seen what I have mentioned about it has really loved it. Aww. Because it's so atypical of what you typically see for a special needs child as far as having options. And the form guides were the first step in creating something that really was designed to work for a special needs family. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. That's so sweet. Okay, so families can find you over at the Plenary website, cmplenary.com, or they can go over to the Plenary Facebook group, right?
Yes.
Yes, go over there and ask you questions. Ask me questions. We're
Ask
there.
any questions you want.
Yes, we're there to help. Okay, so Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited about you joining the plenary and the help that you bring and what you are going to offer so many families. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you.
I am so excited to get to be here.
Thank you.
Welcome.